We are in the 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP28, in Dubai, UAE, where the Philippine delegation is led by DENR Secretary Tony Loizaga. Hi, Sec Tony.
Hello, Daphne. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, so you've been here for many days now. The ministerial meetings have wrapped up, and we are now focused on side events. But could you give us a little rundown of what happened at the ministerial meetings?
I think first, just to explain what we're doing here, there are actually three streams that are ongoing in parallel. First would be the side events, of course, the side events that are being held here at the pavilion, which really showcases kind of whole of government approach towards what we're calling climate action in 2023. So that's one stream. The second stream is side events that our departments, principally the secretaries, are attending for their other counterparts in terms of our other country members in the UN, FCCC. The main event is really the negotiations, and those were initiated by 2 days of ministerial meetings. Typically, these are done by the heads of state. So we had different presidents and heads of government come through. We, of course, missed the opportunity with President Marcos not being able to come because of the situation back home. But we will be delivering his country statement fairly soon in the next couple of days. That leads into the negotiations. The negotiations are to produce the new text for the agreement that will come out of this 2023 meeting. And here the Philippines is working on several work streams or themes. Of course, adaptation is one, mitigation, science and technology, cooperation, Article 6, which is something that has to do with the way we are working together. And there are also issues regarding just transition, particularly of labor and our workforce. So all of that is ongoing in parallel. The negotiating streams are being led by different departments depending on their specialization, and they're being supported by other departments that have related interests in those work streams. So for example, you have climate finance, which is being led by DOF. Then you have also different departments participating in that, like NEDA, for example, or DNR. So we have a workforce here of more or less close to 50 negotiators, and they're being advised by 6 technical advisors.
Mm-hmm. What was the main directives of President Marcos for Team Philippines?
The main directive for the Philippines from the President is really to see how we can advance this issue of loss and damage, and that's a major work stream as well. So loss and damage really refers to the impacts of climate change that go beyond what countries can actually bear. Mm-hmm. They go beyond what adaptation finance can actually carry. They go beyond what climate finance can actually carry as well. So what we're doing now is trying to see how, number one, we can actually begin to host the loss and damage board. Loss and damage has been an issue for many decades. And principally, the issue was brought up by our small island states who, of course, are experiencing loss of their own land area because of sea level rise. And of course, when storms hit them, they have such a devastating loss. That's not strange to us because we do have devastating and catastrophic typhoons as well. So loss and damage is a major issue for the Philippines. So hosting the board, which is now going to be constituted, would be something of a real reminder that we carry the voice of vulnerable nations. And we do have the expertise to host the board. We've hosted the ADB since its inception in the 1960s. We've hosted the WHO since the 1970s. So we do have the technical expertise, and we are able to, in fact, accommodate these yearly meetings that the board will have in order to conduct its business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, all right. Anything else you wanted to add for loss and damage?
I think what's important in this particular COP is the advancement of the idea of nature-based solutions. Mm-hmm. The Philippines is one of the most mega-diverse countries in the world. And because we have that mega-diversity, we're able to actually sustain climate action, which means mitigation and adaptation, through our nature, our natural assets. We are, as you know, on the way to establishing the natural capital accounting system. We've said from the beginning when I started at the DNR, we need to measure what we treasure, and that's natural resources that we have that we don't give the proper value to. Here at COP, you see nature-based solutions everywhere, and how we can in fact make use of our mangrove systems, our forests, to abate what are the impacts of climate change. We use them to mitigate, but we also use them to adapt. Because without mangrove systems, for example, storm surge would hit us in ways that we can only imagine. And to actually prove that, we've had several storm systems come through, wherein those municipalities that actually had the mangrove systems in place suffered less damage than those that didn't have them.
Is COP28 more focused or giving more attention to nature-based solutions in addition to the net zero goal now?
I would say that adaptation and through nature-based solutions is a very strong theme in this COP. Mitigation has always been, of course, an issue because we want to bring down the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But more and more climate vulnerability is taking the stage. And so we're even looking at technology and innovation, not just to address, of course, the issue of mitigation, but to look at ways by which we can advance adaptation and prevent disasters from happening.
One of the things that struck me being here at the Philippine Pavilion was the focus on solutions. We know that we are one of the most vulnerable countries, but we're not crying for help, just crying for help.
Yes.
We are offering lessons that we've learned and solutions that we can offer. Would you like to expound on that?
Yes, I think it's time for us to seize the science that we have in order for us to realize what we can do to contribute to our own adaptation and to our own disaster risk reduction, but also offer solutions for the rest of the world. That has to do, again, principally for the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, making use of our natural systems in order to actually mitigate and adapt, but also prevent disasters from happening. So as you can see, the presentations on each thematic day led by each department. So we've had Department of Health, we've had Department of Science and Technology. Today we had Finance. We will have Energy fairly soon, and of course DILG is here as well. And we're all here to offer solutions from what we have learned institutionally, and as part of our stakeholder management and partnerships strategy, we've invited those that have been working with us to actually share those solutions as well.
You signed an agreement or a commitment with the World Economic Forum on blue carbon
yes.
and plastic
Plastics,
pollution.
yes.
Yeah. What's
So one of the first issues that actually we started to address was this issue of oceans. That's another theme that is very big this year here at COP. And so one of the first events that I spoke at was an event that was organized by the World Economic Forum called No Paris Without Oceans. And the issue really here is we're not paying enough attention to the way the oceans regulate our climate, how they also provide food security, and how they actually are also a source, of course, of risk. And so how we are taking care of the oceans are a big issue, but also the recognition that they provide food security, they provide disaster risk reduction capacity. And so with the World Economic Forum, we signed 2 agreements to work together with the WEF and principally funded by the government of the UK on blue carbon and trying to see how much we can actually measure in terms of the capacity of our blue carbon assets to mitigate or to actually absorb carbon in the atmosphere. And then on global plastics, which as we know is related to marine pollution as well. So global plastics really has to do with sustainable consumption and production, but also in prevention from pollution from plastics making its way into the ocean.
Okay, that's great. You also received an award for President Marcos, the Asia Climate Mobility Champion Leader Award. Tell us about that.
Well, there's a growing recognition that climate-induced mobility, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, because it can cause displacement, is on the top of the list in terms of the impacts to human population. And for this group, for the group that did cite the president has had the foresight to actually recognize the role that climate disasters are playing on the shifting of populations, whether it's internal to the Philippines, whether it's driving some of the families to actually seek livelihood and economic opportunities abroad. But the awareness on the part of the Philippine government that has actually allowed the Department of Migrant Workers, the Department of Labor and Employment, as well as the DFA to provide the support to migrants, whether or not they are moving voluntarily or involuntarily abroad, I think is one of the issues that they are recognizing the President has played a major role in addressing. And so that award is actually a recognition of his own support for studying this very, very sensitive and very important issue of human mobility that is climate-induced.
You have been in this field in an expert level. How different is this COP28 for the Philippines and for you?
Well, let's see. My first COP was COP 6.5, which is the COP was the year that the U.S. pulled out of the COP, and that was thanks to colleagues at the Manila Observatory who asked me to come and observe what was going on. After that, I did join the observatory, and so we were on the sidelines of the rest of the negotiations for many years as observers. So this year, I'm not an observer. I'm actually part of the delegation. What is really striking at this point is to see how much the science has moved forward and how much not just one single discipline has moved forward, but the transdisciplinary approach to climate action. And that's something that has been one of our big issues at the observatory. And then, of course, now in government, we look at alignment across the different departmental mandates in accordance with the Philippine Development Plan, and seeing how that alignment can in fact be impacted by climate-related disasters. And therefore, we need to recognize that there is an environmental component to each of our decisions. One of the statements I also like to make is that the economy really belongs to the environment. Without ecosystems that support the kind of processes, the kind of businesses, the kind of livelihoods that we have, we will not have economic growth that is sustained and resilient. So we need to pay a lot more attention to the way we are managing our environment and our natural resources.
Which is in keeping with what the President wants as well, to have climate change at the center of all policy making and programs for our government.
Exactly. I think for the first time, we have a president that understands what I call the inextricable linkage between climate change, between biodiversity, and between inclusive and resilient human development. And this is a unique time in our history where we need to make strides, in fact, because our own survival does depend on it.
Okay. On that note, we are very grateful that you are leading the Philippine delegation, and we look forward to the next few days. What are you looking forward to in the coming days?
Well, there are sessions here at the events at the pavilion that have to do with renewable energy. They have to do with multi-level participation. The project that will be discussed by the Secretary of Interior and Local Government, which is a project called SHIELD, has to do with climate and disaster risk reduction all the way down to the local government level, but also engages all the different departments in that work of disaster risk reduction. So those are two very important days, I think, energy and local governments. Then, of course, we have the youth that will be coming up. And hopefully, in parallel with that, we are able to negotiate a very acceptable text to the end of this particular COP.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Secretary Loizaga.
Thank you very much, Daphne.
Thank
Really,
you.
really great pressure.
Thank you.